I was halfway through my night shift when she pulled in, an older sedan rolling to a stop under the flickering canopy lights. The place doesn't see much traffic after midnight, and I'd been nodding off behind the counter when the engine noise startled me. She looked tired, nervous maybe, eyes darting around like something was chasing her. I buzzed the intercom and told her pump 6 was the only one still working, even though all of them technically were. She hesitated before pulling over, but she went. They always do. Pump 6 sits apart from the others, right at the edge of the lot, where the gravel meets the tree line. No cameras point that way, not since the last storm fried the circuit. I never fixed it. Management never asked. I watched her step out of the car, clutching her phone in one hand, jacket wrapped tight around her frame. She looked over her shoulder twice before starting the fill-up. That was when I heard it. The low, metallic grind. I leaned forward, trying to see through the grime-caked glass. The ground beneath Pump 6 shifted, barely noticeable, but I'd seen it before. Just a crack, like the concrete was breathing. The woman didn't notice. She was too focused on the nozzle, unaware that the gravel under her feet had started to ripple, like something underneath was waking up. I should have called out to her. I should have stopped her. But I didn't. The panel opened in near silence. One moment she was standing there, and the next she dropped. Not like she fell, more like she was yanked. Fast, brutal, gone. The pump hissed as gasoline spilled from the nozzle still gripped in her hand. I rushed outside, but by the time I got there, the panel had already sealed shut. Perfectly flush with the rest of the pavement, like it had never opened at all, I stared at the empty spot where she'd been. My hands were shaking, and I realized I could still hear a faint scratching sound beneath my boots, like fingernails on concrete. Then it stopped. I backed away slowly, looked up at the woods beyond the lot, and for the first time in a long while, I locked the door behind me. I told myself I'd call the cops, but I didn't, because that wasn't the first time Pump 6 had taken someone. And if I'm honest, I think it's almost due again. I didn't sleep the next day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face just before she vanished, wide with terror, mouth open like she tried to scream but never got the chance. I kept playing it over and over, telling myself it couldn't be real. But the stain on the pavement, the splash of fuel that hadn't evaporated yet, that was real. And then there was the sound, that horrible scraping beneath the lot, like something alive was waiting just below the concrete. That evening, I brought a crowbar with me to work. I knew it was stupid, but I couldn't help it. I waited until after midnight when the traffic slowed to nothing, and I walked out to Pump 6. I tapped the ground where I thought the panel had opened. Solid. I crouched and started prying at a small seam I hadn't noticed before. The crowbar slid in and I pulled. Nothing budged. But when I leaned in closer, I heard it again, scratching. Louder this time. Then a knock. Once, from beneath. I jumped back, nearly dropping the crowbar. The knock came again, slower. Then it stopped. My breath caught as something shifted in the air, like pressure in the lot had changed. Heavier somehow. A wind blew through the trees, bringing with it the unmistakable scent of rot. Not gasoline. Not oil, decay. That's when I noticed it. Handprints on the underside of the pump, smudged, smeared across the metal like someone had been gripping it from underneath, trying to pull themselves back up. I stumbled back into the store and locked the door again. I paced, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. I told myself maybe she'd fallen into a sinkhole, maybe there was some weird geological thing under the lot. But I'd seen the panel close itself. That wasn't nature. That was built, designed. I went into the back office and dug through old records. Nothing. No blueprints. No service logs for that section of the lot. It was like Pump 6 didn't officially exist. An hour later, just before closing, a man came in. He looked disoriented, like he'd been walking for miles. Dirt on his jeans, scratches down his arms, and blood crusted on one sleeve. I asked if he was okay, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Don't go near that pump. Whatever's under there, it remembers who looks too long." Then he turned around and walked out. I ran to the window, but he was gone. No sound, no footsteps, just gone, like the woman, like the others. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe it wasn't just the pump doing the taking. Maybe something was letting them go. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? The cops would laugh, and even if they showed up, the ground would be quiet again, still, like it always is after it feeds. But that man's words stuck in my skull like a rusty nail. It remembers who looks too long. I tried to ignore it, to go back to routine, stock the drinks, clean the counter, wait for nothing. But every shift I felt it, that pressure near pump 6, like the ground itself was watching me. 3 nights later, it took another one. This time it was a trucker, big guy with a stained cap and a voice like gravel. He asked if we had a working pump for diesel. I lied. Told him only pump 6 was up. I wanted to see if it would happen again. I know how that sounds. Sick, twisted, but I needed proof. He pulled over, killed the engine, and stepped out. I kept one hand on the door and the other on the switch that killed the outside lights. If anything happened, I wanted to see it all. At first, nothing. He stood there, waiting. I watched the nozzle click. Then the ground trembled, just a bit. Enough to make the pebbles rattle across the pavement. The man turned, confused, then looked down. I saw it. The panel, splitting again like a wound. He screamed just as it opened beneath him. One arm shot out, trying to grip the pump, but something from below yanked him down. Fast, hard. I heard a pop, his shoulder dislocating maybe, and then he was gone. The panel shut clean, same as before. I rushed outside and dropped to my knees. There was blood this time. Not a lot, just a smear where his fingers scraped across the pump. But the worst part? His voice, still echoing, even after the panel had sealed. "Please, don't leave me here." But it wasn't coming from below. It was coming from inside the pump, like the machinery itself was trying to speak through him, or through what was left of him. That night I didn't go home. I sat on the roof of the station with a flashlight and a loaded revolver I'd found in the drawer beneath the register. I waited. I watched. The trees never moved, but I felt something out there circling. Then, just before sunrise, I saw it. 3 figures standing by pump 6, not moving, not breathing, just watching me. One of them was the woman. Her mouth hung open in an unnatural way, like the skin no longer fit her bones, and her eyes, they were still blinking. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, that maybe I'd finally lost my grip on reality. But they didn't fade. They didn't move. They just stood there, pale and slack-jawed under the weak glow of the canopy. The woman's head tilted slowly, like she was trying to recognize me, but her neck bent too far, the vertebrae cracking like twigs. Beside her, the trucker's chest rose and fell with a wet gurgle, though his throat had been torn open. The third figure was smaller, thinner, and I realized it was a child. I didn't wait. I ran back inside and bolted every lock. The camera feed for pump 6 was still dead, so I peeked through the blinds with shaking hands. They were gone, just gone. Like they'd melted into the ground, but the scent of rot remained, heavy and undeniable. I collapsed behind the counter, hand still gripping the revolver. That's when the humming started, a low electric vibration coming from the fuel pumps. All of them. I crawled to the back office and yanked the circuit breaker. The lights snapped off, but the humming continued. Louder, steadier. Then the store phone rang. I hadn't heard it ring in years. I picked it up slowly, no voice, just static. Then, beneath the static, a whisper. "You watched. Now you feed it." My blood went cold. I slammed the receiver down and backed away from the desk. That's when the floor beneath me cracked open. There was no warning, just the tearing of linoleum and wood and concrete. Something reached up, a hand, gray and bloated, grabbing my ankle. I screamed and kicked, but it yanked me toward the chasm, nails clawing at the floor as I went. Just as it pulled me into the dark, I fired the gun into whatever held me. It screamed, a sound that didn't belong in this world. And the grip loosened just enough for me to crawl free, bleeding and half mad. I quit that night, burned the uniform in the parking lot. But I couldn't leave. Because I've learned the truth. Pump 6 isn't just a trap. It's a door, a feeding point. And I'm the one who keeps it full. Every month it hungers. If I don't send someone, it comes for me. Last night I watched a family of 4 pull in, headlights slicing the fog. I told them Pump 6 was the only one still working. They smiled, waved, and pulled around back. I heard the panel open, then the screaming. I turned off the lights and pretended I didn't see a thing. I'm not the bad person in this story, but I've learned something far worse. Survival doesn't make you innocent. It just makes you next.